So we'll deal this, let's say, that various aspects of development administration, the way we dealt CPA, comparative public administration. So it is not, let's say, like CPA had its own evolution, same way development administration had its own evolution. So at concept level, so largely at concept level, we have to understand what is development, especially in terms of definition, because questions are also asked from concept and definitions. This you should know. Questions will be asked largely two sides, either concept or criticism. This. So we'll deal that aspect, how it has evolved, why it declined, and whether it is, what is the current status, whether it has withered away. That is one, let's say, we have been expecting a question on this aspect. So since some of the things we have already told, so first we'll talk about, dictate about development administration, then we'll explain about its emergence. No. Or simply let's say that it emerged simple, let's say, by due to 40s and 50s environment, as developing countries got independence, hence the concern was how to bring development in developing countries on the pattern of Western countries, so that developing countries can catch developed country fast. So it was about catching developed countries fast, means developed countries wanted development should happen in developing countries in their own fashion. Their own fashion means let's westernize in developing countries. That's why in India also Western culture has lots of preference. Westernization? No. The more the Western you are, more the modern you are. Otherwise you are Deshi type. So this isn't it? So people, let's say that they don't say कि no, I want tea, they want coffee, isn't it? टी जो है वो थोड़ा देशी टाइप का होता है, right? कॉफी जो थोड़ा है मॉडर्न है, right? This anyhow 10 साल और गवर्नमेंट रहेगी तो देशी ही मॉडर्न हो जाएगा. Isn't it? So that is what development administration it is started. So the context will be also more or less same, the way we talked about CPA. One context itself will be CPA. CPA influence also field of development administration. Why they started pursuing development? Because they were in a better position. Western countries, they were in a better position. First. Second, that United Nations was also established for bringing development in developing countries, bridging the gap between have and have-nots. That so it was also established because underdevelopment was considered threat for peace and harmony. Lack of development will be a threat for peace and harmony. So there should be bridging of difference between developed and developing society. The United Nations also came forward, and the Western countries also came forward for development, and they started sending again those, let's say, aid, technology and academicians. So they started providing to developing countries so that they can bring development, means they needed help of Western countries scholars in terms of formulating their policies and programs, because they lack policy expertise. For instance, let's say Paul Appleby was invited by Nehru and he submitted 2 reports in India for bringing administrative reforms. So developing countries also needed to bring administrative reforms. So that can be considered, and that is how the background of, let's say, development administration. These things gave rise to emergence of development. Now let's say that development, since developing countries were underdeveloped, they have huge, means they had lack of resources, the huge lack of resource, demand and supply gap, but they want to catch up fast with the Western society. Then you don't have choice but to adopt administered development. Development should be administered. Development should be planned. We cannot go zigzag way of Western countries. because they developed themselves in 2 centuries, 3 centuries. In fact, their journey started in 16th and 17th century. Right? And we were talking in 20th century. That is half of the 20th century. So you can imagine that they had 3 centuries, 4 centuries, or at least 3 centuries of time to develop themselves. And developing countries were first colonized. So let's say all resources they were siphoned off, and then you want to bring development. So that's what, let's say that they adopted a planned development. Means they had no choice but to adopt planned development, because they cannot leave the country to develop itself. That is how administered development, and that is what we say development. Administration means administration was given task of bringing development. That is called strategy. The strategy how to bring development, it will be administration. And which administration? So development administration. The characteristics of administration will be development administration rather than Weberian model of administration. So that is the background, let's say, which gave rise to the field of development administration, and then we'll talk further. So let's write on this.
The first step towards achieving your dreams is having the right coach. Get the best education with Lukmaan Ias and make your UPSC dreams come true. Download the app now.